Hey, hello everyone. Good evening and welcome to this LinkedIn Live on Job Search Insights from HR Head. And today I have a very special guest, Vikas Dua, with me. Um, those in the audience, let me know if you are confused about how companies hire, and that's the reason you are not able to get in. And in this live, you will exactly know that from the HR head himself, how exactly companies do hiring, how they think about the candidates, and how they assess candidates. What do they look for while judging the candidate? And accordingly, you will be able to strategize your job search, isn't it? Is that your main problem? Let me know in the comments. If you're watching me live, just press that like button so that I'll know who is watching me. And make sure you're typing your questions also along the way. I will have some question answer session towards the end. I'll pick up the best questions from the audience. All right. So this conversation will uncover how, the hidden aspects of hiring. So make sure you stay tuned with us for next 20-30 minutes. Um, Let me first introduce Vikas. Uh, Vikas has over 18 years of experience in HR domain. Okay, and he talks about HR people like you can like them or loathe them, but you cannot ignore them, isn't it? And that's the power of HR people. Really, we all of us know it anyway. And it gives me immense pleasure to have him today in the live. And he's the leading voice of HR in India. And make sure you follow him on LinkedIn because he's a part of LinkedIn Creators Accelerator program, just like me. And he has been posting on LinkedIn a lot actually. I know him for last 2 years, and he makes awesome videos really. So do follow him on LinkedIn for leadership tips, for career growth tips, and of course HR tips from HR. And currently he is heading human resource function for IPG Dextra. He is also author of best-selling book. Okay, so do check him out on Amazon. Just type Vikas Dua. HR in My Heart is name of the book. Okay, and he's an advisor and mentor to many industry bodies. And what I know about him is he's a HR in heart, but he's a mentor and teacher at heart as well. Because I've always seen him talking, the tone and the way he explains things is as if he's being a teacher, and he's very fun to talk to. So I'm really happy, Vikas. Thank you so much for graciously accepting my invitation in a short span of time and coming live. I know you're very busy, having a corporate job and a lot of things associated with. Thank you so much.
It is my honor, in fact, Harsha. Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
You have
So
been very
because
kind
just
with your words.
thank you. A quick format is I have 5-6 questions to ask. I'll ask them, and we will take up some questions from the audience as well. All right.
Sure.
So audience, please do your questions coming. I will choose those questions and throw it at throw them at Vikas towards the end. All right. So Vikas, just first question is, uh, are we back from pandemic? What is the current status of hiring landscape in India? Maybe across industries or in specific industries, are they back to pre-pandemic level?
Sure. Before I answer that, Harshad, honestly, uh, because I don't want to miss it out, I want to thank you for setting up this great forum and the mission that you're on of helping people get jobs and coach them on job search tips, resume building, and others is extremely noble. We know that while on LinkedIn, a lot of professionals come in for learning, collaboration, and intellectual growth. At the core of it, somewhere there is a dying need to build a career or get a next job which is better in terms of maybe role, compensation level, and so on. So what you're doing is extremely noble, and thank you for that on behalf of the entire community that you have.
Thank you,
So
Vikas. Thanks so much.
now, to answer your question, yes, I mean, the current status of the hiring in the country today, if you ask me, is still very dynamic. We've seen the last 12 months or so have been extremely fast paced. There has been hiring across levels, across industries. And especially if you ask me, new age skills on the technology side, on the digital side, have been the ones which have been most in demand, and
Mm.
that has led to, of course, these oft repeated terms like the great resignation, the great reshuffle, and so on. So that trend continues. Looking down a little bit further into the emerging trends, if I would say that, is the fact that on the startup side, there seem to be a little bit of a recalibration happening. There are reports which I'm sure many of our attendees would have even come across of some startups either right sizing or altogether laying off employees,
Mm.
and it's linked somewhere to the larger economic situation where funds available to such startups are now starting to dwindle in some cases. Now, of course, that's not to say that it's happening across the board, but if you look at the trend, there is a little bit of a tightening in terms of hiring in this sector. And my reading of this is that it is going to have a rollover effect on IT industry and therefore other new digital practices wherever. But having said that, the good, I would say, light at the end of the tunnel right now, if I see it, is that a sector like hospitality, for example, which got extremely hit during the pandemic, has also now bounced back in a big way. And, it feels good to know that a lot of staff in that sector, which got possibly retrenched, is now looking at a situation where they have many more opportunities to kind of evaluate for themselves. So I see it as a mixed bag. But overall, net hiring pace is very good, very rapid if one has got the right skills and the right attitude.
Yes, of course. Of course. So that brings me to the next question. When companies do hire, what are the major steps internally as well as externally in lateral hiring process? Okay. And this
Sure.
question will be very obvious to people like you, but I've seen that professionals really do not know how companies hire. Okay.
Sure.
So let's just quickly, you can briefly tell us more about that.
Sure, Harshad. So, hiring per se for any organization, Harshad, is not just that interview that most candidates are able to relate to or possibly have experienced at many times in their career, right? If you look at any hiring, especially at the lateral level, the process starts much earlier in terms of the actual planning of the requirement. And that, given it is a mid-level or a lateral or a senior level requirement and is an externally sourced candidate to be identified, there automatically implies that there is a cost attached to it, which means that it should make financial sense for the organization. So the starting point for any hiring is really where a demand has been raised, has been approved, and therefore then the recruitment or the talent acquisition team starts sourcing candidates for that job role. Okay. Now candidates actually come into the picture at this stage, which is where they start applying, and the starting point really in most cases, if not, is the curriculum vitae or the CV. And the CV being the first stage in the selection process is what we call as TA professionals as a role suitability check or a screening round, where from the CV itself and versus the role which you're hiring for, we try and understand if there is a fit. Does the candidate have the right skills, experience to be able to do the job that we want him or her to do? So that's stage one. Stage two is the assessments. Now, depending on level role, there are various kinds of assessments, and they are essentially what we call the capability check round. So, a CV says certain things. The
Mhm.
assessment helps us validate those through getting the candidate put through various tests. They could be one, they could be two, they could be more, depending on how complex the role is, right? The third is what most candidates experience more often than not is the interview, and that is what we call a capability plus cultural check. Now here, either a manager or a hiring leader, as we call them, or a panel of leaders interact with the candidate to try and understand and get a deeper insight into the candidate's profile. So that's the third stage. And once you clear that is when we have the basically the HR team closing out the offer, which is your compensation discussion or offer stage. So that's in a very simplistic format. This is how any selection plays out, especially when it comes to lateral hiring. I hope that answers your question.
No, this was brilliant because you said that this is how you think. That's what I really wanted to hear, because from the job seekers professionals perspective, it's a totally different story. But you exactly said how you in the company end up starting. And as you said, the starting point is the budget and the need, and
Correct.
then definitions of capabilities, skills, culture requirements. And throughout the process, basically, you are checking those requirements from the
Exactly.
candidates. So
Correct.
now flipping this, now when this is the hiring process in general, then from the professional's point of view, how should we do job search, and how means that, because there are obvious job portals are there, and all major companies have career portals, right? But there are
Correct.
other ways, like going through a referral route, right? Get
Yeah.
someone from, I mean, from your existing employees referring. Then even recruitment consultants are there, right?
Correct.
Or we keep hearing that people get inbound jobs, like, in the sense someone from the HR team only calls them.
Correct.
So what are the different ways, and what are better ways, probably from your perspective? Where do you get better quality candidates? Let me put it this way. uh,
Sure. So great question, Arshad. In fact, I first time, in fact, someone's asked me this on a platform, and I'm so glad you have, because this is the most important question for any candidate. Reason being, this entire approach of the candidates applying for a particular role depends a lot on the candidate's level and the
hmm,
industry and the role and all these parameters, right? In a very simple way, if I were to put it, if you look at junior level employees or the entry level candidates, for them, for example, campus recruitment is the number one route to getting into an organization, right? For them, traditional job boards, which are pretty well known, are again another great way to get tapped by company HR folks. But as you go up the ladder, when you get into the supervisory layer, or you get into mid-level management,
hmm,
what ends up happening is that these jobs, by and large, are, like I said in my earlier answer to you, to your previous question, was are more demand related, in the sense that there are very specific requirements with their own specific niche skills or capabilities that are required. So in
yes.
this case, it is very important to be cognizant of what is the job role being sourced for, and
Hmm,
then applying accordingly. Now, what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is that when a job is posted somewhere, and especially for mid-level recruitment, for senior level recruitment, again, LinkedIn is really today becoming the number one preferred route for many organizations, apart from referral, of course. I'll talk about that. The candidates should be able to actually find that job description first, map their own capability to it, and then apply. In India, we face another unique problem as a talent acquisition professional, is that for every role that is posted or opportunity that is released, you get at least 100x CVs in a typical scenario. Now, for any platform, any individual recruiter, it becomes very difficult to filter out candidates, because most of these candidates, frankly, are not even a direct fit for the job role. So the mindset that candidates need to firstly create, Harshad, in my honest opinion,
hmm,
is that they should
hmm,
know which company, which industry, which job function do they want to work and pick up as a career option for
hmm,
themselves, and only apply selectively to those. Now, to do that, they need to get into the next level, which is really finding out how is that company recruiting, because some companies will recruit through consultants, some companies may
hmm,
recruit through referral program, some may try and do direct hiring through LinkedIn. So it's a little bit of getting onto LinkedIn, spending some time there, uh, following that company page, seeing where the jobs are being posted.
hmm,
Today, if you go into LinkedIn, for example, on a company page,
hmm,
below the top banner, you can easily filter out, people who work in that company. Go into their
yes.
profiles. You'll find a few
Hmm,
recruitment profiles or HR profiles for sure. You'll be able to get a direct connect to them, and then
hmm,
you can drop in a simple mail, uh, politely checking if there are any open opportunities for them. for yourself. So that's the targeted approach that I think works in these times. Of course, one shouldn't spam anyone. Another pro tip one can follow in this case is that if you find someone in the company who is known to you or there's a network connection, try and go through that
Mm.
route, because uh, as you also rightly said in your when you asked me the question, as you go up the hierarchy, we've seen
Mm.
across industries that the majority of the main channel through which companies recruit is a network channel or the referral channel.
Okay.
So it's
Mm.
as you go up the ladder, that validation coming from another employee working in the company who knows you well, who can give you a testimonial, is much better for any hiring leader than a cold CV which has been received from a job board or just through an application process. So that's something that I would definitely guide all the candidates to do.
Thanks, Vikas. Actually, you touched upon all the points. And as you said, there is a lot of competition on job portals, but
Yeah,
every company chooses different types of channels also. But as a talent acquisition manager, referrals, you get better candidates, right? Or you weigh in more on those candidates
correct.
in general. And there are networking ways, and LinkedIn plays a very important role these days,
Sure.
even in
Yes.
India. Great,
Correct.
great. Let me just, in the audience, the people who are actually looking for next job right now, and they are in that zone of, doing job search. And Vikas just talked about various ways in which companies look for good candidates. Uh, I'm doing a webinar coming Saturday, just 2 days from today, 7 p.m., on this very specific thing, where I share various strategies of job search and a step-by-step plan. So you can just register. This is a free webinar on Zoom and harshadbhagwat.com/webinar. And you can meet me live. You can ask me your questions and you can learn this step-by-step process in detail, of course, from the professional's perspective. But of course, whatever I've learned is from talking to HR leaders like Vikas. So I'll be able to crystallize all those learnings in a more shorter uh, step-by-step plan for you. And till that time, keep your questions coming up. I'm seeing already good questions coming up, so please keep them coming. Now, because going next inside the hiring process, like a bit step by step, and as you said, the first step is for the candidate is resume, right? Like
Yeah.
reaching out to you or submitting to on a portal or through a talent acquisition manager or an employee referral, the resume. So when you get a resume, what do you expect for you to quickly do your job necessarily? When do you get excited?
Oh, great question, Harshad. I think I get excited if the resume is error free, without typos, the formatting is great, the same font throughout, and very well structured, right? CV is supposed to have your snapshot summary of your education, your career trajectory, your accomplishments, and your personality, if you look at it broadly. And if it presents that in a crisp 1 to 2 page or max, in a very clean way where I can quickly get that information when I am reading it, that does it for me.
Very
I
crisp
don't
answer,
think
Harsha.
a lot of people spend enough time on their resume, and mostly I know for HR leaders and for, even if you were to search on LinkedIn, for example, whenever a CV has a spelling mistake, it kind of immediately puts the hiring leaders off. So these little finer details talk a lot about an individual and should be taken care of, in my
And just a quick follow-up question is, what do you check in the resume? You talked about capabilities, skills, culture.
view.
So in resume, what do you quickly check?
We quickly check when we are scanning a resume really is the matching with the JD or the job description that we've released for that particular role, and whether there are at least, let's say 70-80% tick marks against the job description, because that is the bare minimum one would possibly need to look at a fitment further down. So if it tick marks in terms of the education, in terms of the careers and the projects that the individual has done, the work that he or she has performed, and it gets clear to the next round.
Yeah, so resume has to be error-free. your summary and experience section should quickly help people like Vikas do their job. And matched with JD, basically, why are you applying for that job description? Why are you the best candidate for that job description? In general, you might be the best professional, but Vikas is only looking for that particular job description, right? So
And
why are you there? Perfect,
and in
Vikas.
fact, I
Thank you
add,
so much.
sorry to interject you there, Harshad, but you gave me a hint about a very important point which I should mention here, is that when you're applying for a job as well, do customize your JD, customize your CV as per the JD. Now, one is not saying that you should put in fake information or
Hmm.
try to match the JD 100%. But yes, what
Hmm.
happens is, since your resume is typically, we say, also just 2 pages, it's impossible for you to put down everything you've done. But if the job description is asking for something, or let's say a quality certification which you've done in the past, and somehow your current CV doesn't have it, but you also have that certification, do mention it. So, not typically, they say that you should have at least 2 to 3 versions of your CV, depending on what kind of roles you're applying for, and then you can do a little bit of a plus minus whenever you're actually going down to submit the CV.
Brilliant. Yeah, perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. And now moving forward, right? When you select few candidates from resumes, you have a longer interview process, right? Maybe a
Yes.
screening call and a panel round, or multiple interview rounds, especially for senior hires. Uh, what do you look for in interviews, right? After resume, you are already selected them, but interviews are when they really get checked by you, really, right? So, what do you
Yes.
look for in interviews?
So in the interviews, it's really a combination of the capability check and the fitment to the role being the primary checking point, as well as a cultural fit with the organization, because that also gives you a sense of whether that individual who's going to come in from the external space going to connect and work and collaborate and fit in with your existing people, and be adding to the culture in a positive way for your organization. Every company has its own preferred traits, you could say, or style of working, and therefore, while diversity is always good in different
Hmm.
ways, but in some cases you do need to understand that whoever is coming in also needs to work collaboratively with the incumbents,
Yes.
and
Yes.
therefore, to that extent, that cultural angle is also scrutinized, apart from, of course, getting validation of whatever has been put on the CV in terms of past work done, achievements, and so on and so forth.
Perfect, perfect. So, capabilities and culture at the same time. And that's why
Yeah.
you have many rounds, right? Basically, you're getting checked from various people on similar
Correct.
things. And
Yeah.
these are subjective things, right? So I think you would need to check from multiple people because it is subjective.
Correct. And typically, as you grow up the ladder, you tend to have work or have responsibilities which move across functions, across departments, and you need to work with different individuals and have more stakeholders. So, the multiple rounds really help different stakeholders assess your profile from different angles, so that there is a consensus in terms of your fitment with the organization.
Thanks, Vikas, for this. And I do have few questions more, but I'm seeing some very good questions from the audience. All right, so
Sure.
I'll take them up now, and if we have some time, I'll ask my questions a little later. And
No problem.
just to for the audience, I'm sure you're loving Vikas already with his very straight and crisp answers. I've seen very few people who can articulate their thought and speak impromptu so crisp. So I'm sure his book is similar to that, right? So do check out HR in My Heart, and it's on leadership lessons. So I'm sure all of us will have a lot to learn from this book. You can just get it on Amazon. And coming back to questions, I think Arun is asking very good questions. So let me put his question, highlight his question, and others in the audience, please do comment your questions. Arun is saying, please give some insights on HR leaders using AI related softwares for screening CVs and resume, probably like ATS type, or maybe even advanced versions of ATS. So, what are your thoughts? Or are they really using it? And should we be worried? Should we check change our resume accordingly? What do we do?
So, great question, Arun. Thank you so much for joining in today. And I'm very fortunate that I had a chance to work with one of the biggest IT players in the early part of my career, where a lot of this AI, semi-AI driven recruitment software was just getting piloted, and I got a hands-on view of actually working with the founders themselves and deploying and testing some of these systems. So, I'm a huge fan of
Mhm.
technology, and I know for a fact that in a country like ours, where, like I mentioned a little time ago, when you have 100 CVs for every role, do you do need that additional support to be able to zone down on the right candidate, right?
Yes.
And I see these platforms like Iron Man's metal suit, which is giving
Okay.
additional power to the recruiter,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So it helps them screen out the right CVs. From that 100, you get good 10 CVs. So the recruiter can
Yes.
spend quality time with those 10 candidates and figure out who to further move into the next stage. So this is definitely already deployed in a lot of large organizations, and my sense it will continue to get smarter, because AI, as everyone must be aware, the more data sets, the more churning of analysis, the better the output will become. So this will only grow from here.
My follow-up question, Vikas, because you have been working with software companies who build those things, have
Mhm.
you seen demos of those companies who are doing automated interviews, like AI-based interviews? Now it's in the news. So,
At this stage, my experience also has been, Harshad, it's been used as a sort of pre-filter initial stages.
okay.
The entire hiring decision at some point does involve humans even today. We've not
Yes.
reached that
Yes.
stage where an individual can be hired and just deployed with no human interaction at all. Maybe 10 years from
Yes.
now, I don't know. But at this stage, I think we still value the human touch.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Arun has one more interesting question. It's very specific to veteran military leaders. Okay, and I know in my family also we had this discussion. So they want to come back to
Yes.
corporate world after their service, and they
Hmm.
do have very unique skills and experience. So, but they might not have corporate experience, right?
Correct.
So, what advice have you seen them? I mean, I have personally seen them working in corporate
Correct.
many times, but how do they start this journey?
Yeah. Sure. In fact, I'd recently done a similar chat with a group which was focusing entirely on veteran military leaders
Okay.
looking to get into the corporate space. And my frank advice to them was really, again, to identify companies, and there are companies which encourage and have a yearly practice of recruiting some from officers who are moving out of the short service commission and so on. So there are known names in that space which definitely one can find out easily. For that, the starting point for such individuals really, and such leaders, is to connect with their community, their ex superiors, people who have already made that transition in the
Yes.
past, manage to cross that bridge, because they are the ones who can really help open the door for them.
Yes.
And
Yes. Exactly.
therefore,
Yeah.
coming back to the point again, this level of leadership is actually senior leadership, where, again, like I mentioned earlier, networking is the number one route into an organization. So one has to build those connects, and of course today, thanks to LinkedIn, that task is a little easier than earlier before.
Yes. Yes. Thanks, Arun, for these two great questions. And moving to now, Shreya, how do you actually check whether a candidate is culturally fit in a short span of 30 minutes interview, right? I mean, how do you check that? Because I'm sure, in just 30 minutes and in interviews, we are not ourselves, right? Actually,
Yeah, correct.
really, it's very difficult to be ourselves. And how do you check culture fit?
Great question, Shreya. And in fact, tricky one. I'm on a spot on this one. But yeah, fact is, it goes wrong sometimes. It has in my career. I've seen it go wrong multiple number of times, because Harshad already answered it. An interview is sort of you can say, a creative or artificial environment where everyone comes very, very prepared and plays the game by the book. But companies have tried to have longer interviews, have tried multiple panel interviews that we spoke about in the past, to kind of avoid this. And typically, if you can be 90% of the time correct, I think that's a good metric to aim for. There will be that one odd case which may turn out to be not the right cultural fit, and unfortunately, at this point, I don't think there's a perfect solution available to us.
Yes. Yes. Because just how do you check in the sense, are there any signals you try to get from the candidate? Like, or should candidate, looking at your culture, should say few things about from personal stories or from experience to tell you or give you those signals?
It's a question of I would say, Harshad, the body language, the verbiage that the
Okay.
candidate is using that communicates the style of the operating of that individual. What also helps in this particular area is what we call reference checks, right? A lot of times reference checks
Okay.
are more about
Mm.
uh, you know understanding the candidate from another party. Again, it can be easily manipulated because typically candidates themselves give the references, but in some
Mm.
cases where you have a doubt, what we recommend is doing a discrete reference check through LinkedIn. You can easily find out who's a common
Yes.
connection, and
Yes.
do a baseline check without, of course, divulging too much and harming the candidate's career. I mean, one shouldn't reach out to that person's boss, for example. It has to be done very discreetly, very
Yes.
carefully.
And in this regard, going through networking route or going through referral route actually helps, right? That you have the first reference from your
Correct.
own employee base, actually. So it
Yes.
helps you. Yes.
And that's a huge
One
plus
more.
for mid and senior level hires, because that is the biggest question mark in everyone's mind, right? Will this person fit in? Will he be able to carry everyone along?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, another great question from Manish. How do HR approaches to CV when there is a career change, basically, and industry change, complete industry change? Do you welcome, to see this as prospect and suitability when industry is different? Probably functional role is similar, so but industry is completely different.
So, Harshad, one thing is clear. I think your community is full of very strong and direct individuals, and no holds
Good
barred.
questions.
Good question, I agree. And you want the honest HR in my heart answer. Fact is, it's a tough one. By
Yeah,
design, the recruitment process that most companies run is built around playing safe, which is
yeah,
the candidate has
yeah,
done X, we will hire him for X, and it's unfortunate, but that's the hard reality. Risk taking ability tends to be low in
yeah,
many cases, and therefore in such a scenario you really need to take your game one level higher in terms of proactively reaching out, showcasing, trying to get an interview, trying to get a conversation going with someone in the organization, with the right people to present your capability and your skill set, so that you can do that. I mean, just to share example, in previous organizations we have
yeah,
recruited ex veterans, and they've done wonderful work in HR in recruitment, and some of them have worked as my peers, and they had nothing to do with recruitment or in the forces, right? But it's about having capability, able to structure thought, logic, put in place frameworks, and execute. And, I've seen them personally do a great job. So yes, we need all HR folks, all hiring managers to kind of open their minds up a bit, and I hope some of them are listening and will think this through.
yeah. And I'm a career changer myself. So a corollary question is, should we not approach HR directly when you're a career changer, rather than approach through networking someone in a similar functional role, so that we can have those discussions that how I'm fitting into their industry as well. As you said,
Sure.
veterans can easily do it. So
Yeah. So yes, it's a combination of both. I would say I would not say that all HR people will immediately reject a CV like this, but it's about carrying yourself with that confidence and having a nice pitch which you can share, and assuming the person on the other side, whether HR or non-HR, is mature enough and able to take a, like they say, a punt on you. It's possible that things move forward.
now, hopefully last question, Shreya, again. It's a very good question again for you. how do you look at hiring while HR professional, right? So
Well,
HR hiring HR. So
so when I look at hiring an HR person, I frankly just look at, really how passionate that person is about working and solving people's problems. If it's not intrinsic, because with HR you often get into a framework. I've noticed uh, the practitioners tend to see themselves as maybe policemen or one step higher, and that approach doesn't work today. You've got to be able to solve people's problems. If that is coming internally and directly to you, then you've made the first tick mark in my book, at least.
yeah, yeah. They are from your community, so I'm sure you know. I mean, finally, it's all about working with people. So, do they show
Correct.
that passion,
Yeah.
right? And that innate curiosity about maybe understanding people, working with them, and really, thanks, Vikas. So, I think this is all. I mean, these are all the questions. So, great questions. I'm really happy about this conversation because of the questions really, and as you said, the
Exactly.
community really pulled it up.
Yeah. Really thrilled to be here. After a long time, I really enjoyed a session, thanks to the interesting questions which have come up from you as well as the audience. So, wish everyone
Thank
all
you.
the best. And
Yeah, thank you so much, Vikas. And I think as I've said earlier, do follow Vikas on LinkedIn. He posts weekly great videos, really short videos, and a lot of text post as well. So you will enjoy conversations. You can of course comment on his post with your more questions as well. And as I said, like those of you who are really searching for a job now, do meet me in my live webinar coming Saturday. It's harshadbhagwat.com/webinar. If you have burning questions, very personal questions, you can maybe ask them there as well and continue. And I'm planning to do these live sessions every week. So, stay tuned for these more live sessions. Those of you who missed, you can still watch the recording, right? You can still click on the same link and come here and watch the entire recording. It will stay on LinkedIn anyway. Till next time, thank you so much. And Vikas, really appreciate from the bottom of my heart giving you a very good time and answering it very crisp and direct. Thank you so much.
thank you for having me. Have a great evening.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Asha.
much. Bye bye, everyone.